The emergency lights flashed red throughout the Galactic Council station. Every member species had sent their representatives, and the massive chamber buzzed with worried conversations in 1,000 different languages. The translators worked overtime, filling the air with overlapping voices. Ambassador Khalith of the Thrazan Concordat stood at the center podium, her forearms trembling slightly. She had served the council for 60 years and had never seen anything like this. On the holographic display behind her, a blue and green planet rotated slowly. It looked peaceful, beautiful even. "This is Earth," Keyleth announced, and the chamber fell silent, also designated as Terra by its native inhabitants. "Our survey teams have classified it as a Class 12 Deathworld." Gasps echoed through the chamber. A Class 12 rating meant the planet was extraordinarily hostile to life. Most civilized species evolved on Class 3 to Class 5 worlds, where the weather was mild and the animals were manageable. A Class 12 world should not have produced intelligent life at all. "The inhabitants call themselves humans," Keyleth continued. "They have independently developed faster than light travel. They have reached out to us in peace. However, council members, I must warn you about the nature of their homeworld." The hologram changed to show Earth's statistics. The gravity was 40% stronger than galactic standard. The atmosphere contained high levels of oxygen, making it highly flammable. The planet experienced violent storms, earthquakes, and volcanic eruptions regularly. The native wildlife included creatures that could kill a human in seconds, and the humans had no natural weapons like claws or venom or armor plating. "How did they survive?" asked Representative Morth, a crystalline being from a low-gravity moon. "Endurance," Keyleth said quietly. "Adaptability, tool use, and something our xenopsychologists call stubbornness. The humans simply refused to die." The council debated for 3 hours. Some wanted to welcome humanity immediately. Others urged caution. A few suggested that any species from such a harsh world might be too dangerous to interact with. In the end, they voted to send a diplomatic mission and observe humanity's behavior. That decision lasted exactly 4 weeks. The Vrax Collective had been expanding aggressively for decades, and the council had mostly looked the other way. The Vrax were insectoid warriors who believed that strength determined worthiness. When they heard about humanity, they saw an opportunity to test themselves against a species from a death world. The Vrax didn't ask permission. They simply attacked. The human colony on Epsilon Station was small, home to only 10,000 people. The Vrax fleet arrived without warning, 12 massive warships against a mining outpost with minimal defenses. The Vrax commander, Thex-9, expected immediate surrender. This was how galactic warfare worked. The weaker side surrendered, negotiations happened, and usually the stronger side gained some territory or resources. Very few people actually died. Thex-9 sent the standard ultimatum: surrender or face destruction. The humans responded with a single word: no. Thex-9 was confused but proceeded with standard protocol. His ships began orbital bombardment of the station's defensive platforms. The human weapons were primitive, barely scratching the Vrax shields. Within an hour, the station's defenses were gone. Thex-9 prepared his ground troops to land and accept the inevitable surrender. That's when everything went wrong. Small human ships launched from the station. They were tiny, barely larger than escape pods, and they were moving fast. Very fast, too fast. Thex-9 realized they weren't trying to escape. They were heading directly toward his fleet. "Evasive maneuvers," he ordered, but it was too late. The first human ship slammed into the side of a Vrax cruiser. It was a chemical rocket, primitive and crude, but it punched through the hull. The explosion was massive. Before Thex-9 could react, more human ships followed. Some carried explosives. Others carried soldiers. The concept of boarding an enemy ship during battle had been obsolete for 3,000 years. Modern warfare happened at long range with energy weapons and missiles. Nobody got close enough to physically enter an enemy vessel. It was insane. It was suicide. The humans did it anyway. Thex-9 watched his monitors in disbelief as humans in armored suits cut through his ship's hulls with plasma torches. They forced their way inside, carrying primitive projectile weapons that fired metal slugs. The slugs tore through Vrax soldiers like paper. The Vrax were excellent warriors by galactic standards. They had won hundreds of battles, but they had never fought hand-to-hand in close quarters. Nobody had. It wasn't done. The humans had evolved doing nothing but fighting in close quarters. Inside the Vrax ships, Chaos erupted. The Vrak soldiers were faster and stronger than humans, but the humans simply wouldn't stop. A Vrak's warrior would shoot a human twice and the human would keep coming, bleeding but still fighting. The humans used knives when they ran out of bullets. They used their fists when they lost their knives. One human allegedly killed a Vrak soldier with a broken piece of pipe. The entire battle was broadcast across the galactic network. Billions of beings watched in horror as humans fought with savage efficiency. They saw humans take wounds that should have been fatal and keep fighting. They saw humans drag their injured companions to safety while under fire. They saw humans coordinate attacks using nothing but hand signals and trust. 6 hours later, the battle was over. The Vraks had lost 4 ships. 3 had been captured. Thousands of Vrak soldiers were dead or wounded. The human casualties were severe, but the colony survived. Thex 9 surrendered. He had no choice. The galactic community was stunned. Emergency council sessions were called. Military analysts tried to explain what had happened. Xenopsychologists studied the footage frame by frame. Ambassador Khalith stood before the council again, her expression grim. "We have received a message from the human government," she said. They apologized for the loss of life. They assumed this was normal warfare and responded accordingly. Normal? Councillor Vesh shouted from his seat. They boarded ships. They fought with primitive weapons. They killed with their bare hands. They believed they were fighting for survival, Keyleth said. On a death world, you fight with everything you have or you die. They don't understand our concept of civilized warfare because on Earth there is no such thing. War is survival, and survival means doing whatever it takes. The council chamber erupted in arguments. Some demanded humanity be sanctioned. Others wanted them quarantined to their home system. A few quiet voices suggested that maybe, just maybe, humanity could teach the galaxy something valuable about defending itself. The debate raged for hours. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, military commanders studied the battle footage. They watched the humans fight and wondered what other insane tactics a Deathworld species might possess. The Vraks Collective issued a formal statement. We tested the humans. They have proven themselves formidable. We will honor our surrender and seek no revenge. But the damage was done. Humanity had introduced close-quarters combat back to galactic warfare. They had shown that primitive tactics could defeat advanced technology. They had proven that sometimes the willingness to fight harder than your enemy mattered more than having better weapons. The galaxy would never be the same, and this was just the beginning. The Vraks Collective's leaders met in their war chamber beneath the red sands of their homeworld. They had been humiliated. Their warriors, who had conquered 17 systems in the past century, had been defeated by primitives who barely understood proper spaceflight. High Commander Zeth Prime addressed the assembly. We underestimated the humans. We will not make that mistake again. I am calling for a full battle fleet to be dispatched to human space. We will study their tactics and crush them properly. The council tried to intervene. Ambassador Keyleth sent urgent messages to both sides begging for calm. The humans responded that they wanted peace but would defend themselves if attacked. The Vraks responded by sending 200 warships toward human territory. The galaxy watched. News networks from every species covered the story. Military academies analyzed the upcoming battle. Everyone expected the humans to lose. 200 Vrak ships against humanity's small fleet of perhaps 30 vessels. The mathematics were simple. The humans would be destroyed, but nobody had asked the humans what they thought about mathematics. Admiral Sarah Chen commanded the human defense fleet from the bridge of the carrier Indomitable. She was 50 years old, gray-haired, and had served in 3 wars on Earth before humanity reached the stars. She looked at the sensor readings showing the massive Vraks fleet approaching and smiled. They're coming in a standard formation, she said to her tactical officer. Proud and confident. Good. Let them come. Admiral, we're outnumbered 7-1. The tactical officer said nervously. I know, Chen replied. That's why we're not going to fight fair. The human fleet retreated as the Vraks approached. They fell back toward the asteroid belt in the Proxima system, the system humans had been mining for resources. The Vraks followed, eager to catch the fleeing humans and finish the battle quickly. Commander Zeth Prime watched from his flagship. They run like cowards, he said with satisfaction. Deathworld or not, They know when they are beaten. He was wrong. The moment the Vrax fleet entered the asteroid field, everything changed. The asteroids were not all natural. Humans had been living and working in this belt for years. They had hollowed out dozens of rocks and hidden small crews inside them. They had mounted railguns on asteroids. They had filled mining drones with explosives. The first wave of attacks came from nowhere. Railgun slugs traveling at incredible speeds punched through Vrax shields. The slugs were just metal, primitive and simple, but they hit hard. 3 Vrax ships lost their engines in the first 30 seconds. "Return fire," Zeth Prime ordered. "Target those asteroids." But which asteroids? There were thousands of them. And the humans kept moving, using small thrusters to shift their positions. The Vrax fired at everything, wasting energy and ammunition hitting empty rocks. Then the mining drones arrived. They were simple robots designed for breaking up asteroids. Humans had packed them with explosives and set them on collision courses with Vrax ships. The drones were small and hard to target. They came in swarms. Dozens of them. Hundreds. Zeth Prime watched in disbelief as a drone smashed into the side of a heavy cruiser. The explosion tore a massive hole in the hull. Atmosphere vented into space. Another drone hit the same ship. Then another. The cruiser broke apart. "This is not warfare," Zeth Prime shouted. "This is madness." Admiral Chen listened to the intercepted transmission and laughed. "You wanted war with Deathworlders. This is what you get." The battle continued for 6 hours. The Vrax tried to push through the asteroid field, but the humans had turned it into a death trap. Every rock could be hiding enemies. Every piece of debris could be a bomb. The Vrax formation broke apart as ships tried to avoid the chaos. That's when the human fleet struck. They came in fast and low, using the asteroids for cover. They didn't try to fight the Vrax ships in open combat. Instead, they hit and ran, firing missiles and then disappearing back into the belt. The Vrax couldn't chase them without risking more drone attacks. But the worst part, the part that horrified the watching galaxy, was what happened when a Vrax ship got disabled. Human boarding parties would launch immediately. They wouldn't destroy the helpless ship. They would capture it, fight room by room through the corridors, take prisoners, and they would use the captured ship against its former allies. One Vrax destroyer was boarded and captured in 40 minutes. The humans patched the holes, got the engines running, and used it to attack other Vrax ships. When the confused Vrax tried to determine if the destroyer was friend or enemy, the humans would get close enough to launch another boarding party. Zeth Prime finally understood. The humans weren't trying to destroy his fleet. They were trying to steal it. "All ships retreat," he ordered. "Get out of this death trap now." The Vrax fleet fled. They left behind 60 destroyed ships and 15 captured ones. Hundreds of Vrax soldiers were prisoners. The mighty battle fleet that was supposed to crush humanity limped home in disgrace. The battle footage reached the Galactic Council within hours. Ambassador Khalith watched it 3 times, and each viewing made her feel worse. She called an emergency session. "We need to discuss the human tactics," she said to the assembled representatives. "Discuss?" Counselor Vesh was shaking. "They used kamikaze drones. They hid in asteroids like predators waiting for prey. They captured ships and turned them against their owners. These tactics are effective," said a quiet voice. Everyone turned. The speaker was a small, furry being from the Keln Federation, a minor power that had been bullied by larger neighbors for decades. The humans won against impossible odds. They used creativity and intelligence to overcome superior numbers. Is that not the definition of brilliant tactics? "It's dishonorable," Vesh shouted. "It's survival," the Keln representative replied. "On a death world, honor doesn't matter. Survival matters. Maybe we soft-worlders have forgotten what real fighting looks like." The chamber erupted in arguments. Some species were disgusted by human tactics. Others were intrigued. A few were terrified of what else humans might be capable of. Admiral Chen attended the council session via hologram. She stood before the galaxy's leaders in her uniform, calm and professional. "Why do you fight this way?" Keyleth asked her. Chen considered the question. "Because on Earth we had to. We didn't have armor plating or natural weapons. We couldn't breathe different atmospheres or survive in extreme temperatures naturally. We had to be smart, we had to use tools, we had to work together, and we had to be willing to do whatever it took to survive. But the kamikaze drones, Vesh said, sending automated ships to crash into enemies. It's barbaric. It's effective, Chen replied simply. And the drones were automated, no lives lost. Would you prefer we sent crewed ships on suicide runs? Because we've done that too in our history, when we had no choice. The council members shifted uncomfortably. The idea of deliberately sacrificing crew members was unthinkable to most species. We don't want to conquer anyone, Chen continued. We don't want to fight. But if someone attacks us, we will defend ourselves using every advantage we have. That includes tactics you find uncomfortable. On Earth, we have a saying, all's fair in love and war. And maybe your civilized galaxy forgot the second part. The session ended with no resolution. The Vraks officially sued for peace, too damaged to continue fighting. The council demanded humanity stop using barbaric tactics. Humanity politely declined. But something else was happening across the galaxy. Small species, minor powers, colonies that had been bullied by larger neighbors were watching. They saw that David could defeat Goliath. They saw that superior technology didn't always win. They saw that creative thinking and determination could overcome raw power, and they wanted to learn. Humanity received hundreds of requests for military advisors. The council tried to suppress the requests, but information, once released, cannot be contained. The Deathworlder doctrine was spreading. The galaxy would never fight the same way again. 3 months after the Battle of Proxima Anchor, the Galactic Council faced a new crisis. Several major powers had formed an alliance specifically to deal with the human problem. They called themselves the Containment Coalition. The coalition consisted of 3 powerful species. The Zephyrim were crystalline beings who lived for thousands of years and valued logic above all else. The Nereids were aquatic creatures from deep ocean worlds who fought with sophisticated technology. The collective was a hive mind that controlled millions of bodies across dozens of planets. Together they represented nearly 1/3 of the galaxy's military strength. Their leader was Archon Tal Zen, a Zephyrim who had served on the council for 800 years. He addressed the full council assembly with his proposal. Humanity has introduced chaos to galactic civilization, Tal Zen said, his crystalline voice ringing through the chamber. Their tactics violate every convention of civilized warfare. They have inspired rebellious elements across the galaxy. If we do not act now, we will see a return to barbarism. The Dark Ages will come again. Ambassador Kaleth tried to argue. The humans have attacked no one who did not attack them first. They seek only to defend themselves. They seek to spread their poison, Tal Zen replied. We have intercepted communications showing humans training military forces for 17 different minor species. They are creating an army of fanatics who believe that civilized rules do not matter. The council voted. The decision was narrow, but it passed. Humanity would be given an ultimatum: accept permanent quarantine to their home system or face forced containment. The human delegation was led by Ambassador Marcus Webb, a former soldier who had lost his left arm in the Vraks conflict. He listened to the ultimatum in silence. When Tal Zen finished, Webb stood slowly. No, Webb said simply. You do not understand, Tal Zen said. This is not a negotiation. We have assembled 10,000 ships, the largest military fleet in modern history. You have perhaps 300 vessels. Accept the quarantine or be destroyed. Webb smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Do you know what we call 10,000 to 1 odds? We call it Tuesday. You want to quarantine us to our home system? Come and try. The coalition fleet assembled in neutral space. It was an impressive sight. 10,000 warships from 3 different species, all working together with perfect coordination. The Zephyrim contributed their powerful beam weapons. The Nereids brought their advanced shields. The collective provided vast numbers of drones and fighters. They jumped into the Sol system, expecting to overwhelm humanity with pure force. The system appeared empty, Admiral. Chen watched the coalition. Fleet arrived from her command center deep inside Titan, Saturn's largest moon. She had been preparing for this moment since the ultimatum was delivered. They're spreading out to search for us, her tactical officer reported. They're being cautious. Good, Chen said. Let them spread out. Let them think they're being smart. The Coalition found the human fleet behind the sun. It was a logical place to hide. Using the star's radiation to mask their energy signatures, the Coalition fleet moved to engage, planning to trap the humans against the sun where they couldn't retreat. That's when the humans disappeared. The ships went completely dark. No engines, no weapons, no communications. They just drifted like debris in space. The Coalition fleet surrounded them, confused. "It's a trick," Archon Talzen said from his flagship. "They're trying to make us lower our guard. Prepare boarding parties to inspect those ships." The boarding parties never made it. As soon as Coalition ships got close, the human vessels came alive. Weapons fired at point-blank range. Missile tubes opened and launched their payloads directly into Coalition hulls. Ships that had appeared dead suddenly burned their engines and rammed into surprised enemies. The Coalition fleet broke formation, trying to deal with enemies that literally played dead and then struck without warning. While they were confused, the real attack began. From the asteroid belt, from the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, from hidden bases on Mars, human ships launched. But they weren't targeting the Coalition warships. They were targeting the space between the Coalition and their exit points. The humans mined the battlefield. For the next 6 hours, the Coalition fleet tried to regroup and push through to attack Earth directly, but every path they took was filled with mines. Not sophisticated ones, just simple explosive devices that detonated when something got close. Thousands of them. Too many to clear quickly. And while the Coalition dealt with the mines, other things started happening. The Nereid ships reported problems with their life support systems. Mold was growing in their water recycling systems. Aggressive, fast-growing mold that clogged filters and made the water toxic. The Nereids had to divert half their fleet to deal with the problem. "Biological warfare," Talzen said with disgust. "They're using living weapons." "It's just mold." Chen's voice came over the emergency channel that connected all fleets. "We launched it in sealed containers attached to small drones. The containers break when they touch your ships. The mold spores spread. It's not deadly. It's just inconvenient. But I can make it deadly if you'd like." The Coalition command channel erupted in angry voices, but Chen wasn't done. "You wanted to see our tactics? Let me show you some others." The humans started broadcasting on all frequencies. At first, the Coalition thought it was a surrender message. Then they realized it was music. Loud, aggressive, angry music that the humans called death metal. Mixed with the music were sounds of people screaming, weapons firing, and explosions. Also mixed in were clips from human horror movies showing graphic violence. The collective, being a hive mind, was particularly vulnerable to sensory attacks. The discord and chaos in the broadcast disrupted their communication. Thousands of their drone ships became uncoordinated, crashing into each other or flying in random directions. "Turn off your receivers," Talzen ordered. "We need receivers to coordinate," the Nereid admiral replied. "We can't fight effectively while deaf." They were trapped between tolerating the psychological assault or fighting blind, but the worst was yet to come. The Coalition fleet finally pushed past the minefield and approached Earth's orbit. They expected desperate defense from a cornered enemy. What they found was an empty space where Earth's defensive satellites should have been. Then those satellites appeared, all at once. Thousands of them. They had been hidden, powered down, pretending to be space debris. Now they activated and opened fire. They were primitive compared to Coalition technology. Many were just kinetic weapons that threw chunks of metal. But there were so many of them. And they were everywhere. The Coalition fleet found itself in a spherical kill zone, taking fire from every direction at once. "This is insanity," the Nereid admiral shouted. "They've weaponized their entire orbital space." "It's their home system," Chen replied calmly over the channel. "Did you think we wouldn't prepare? We've been planning planetary defense since before we reached space. We have bunkers that can survive nuclear war. We have enough weapons hidden on our own planet to fight for decades. You can bomb Earth from orbit, but the moment you try to land, you'll face 8 billion humans who really don't want you there." Commander Talzen made a decision. "Focus fire on the human fleet. Ignore the satellites. We'll deal with them after we destroy their military." The Coalition concentrated their fire on Chen's ships. The human vessels took heavy damage. 3 carriers exploded. A dozen cruisers were disabled. The Coalition was winning through pure firepower. Then Chen broadcast one final message. "You've never fought for survival," she said. You fight for resources, for honor, for territory. We've fought tooth and nail against our own planet for 200,000 years just to earn the right to exist. We've survived ice ages, plagues, predators, and our own stupidity. You can't out-crazy, she paused. Also, you should know that half your fleet is now inside our optimal firing range for the orbital defense platforms you've been ignoring. Fire. Every satellite, every hidden weapon platform, every automated defense system that had been conserving power suddenly opened fire at maximum output. The coalition fleet, packed tightly together as they focused on Chen's ships, took devastating damage. The Nereids broke first. They had already lost 40% of their ships, and the mold problem was getting worse. Their commander issued a formal withdrawal and jumped out of the system. The collective tried to continue fighting, but without the Nereids' shields, their drone ships were too vulnerable. They retreated next. That left only the Zephyrim. Archon Talzin stared at the tactical display, his crystalline form flickering with emotion. He had lost thousands of ships. The humans had lost hundreds. The mathematics made no sense. How? He asked simply. Chen's hologram appeared before him. She looked tired, sad even, because we've spent our entire existence fighting against impossible odds. We're really good at it. We don't want to be, but we are. Talzin ordered his remaining ships to retreat. The containment coalition had failed, and across the galaxy, everyone had watched it happen. The Galactic Council was in chaos. Representatives shouted at each other across the chamber. Some demanded immediate action against humanity. Others called for peace talks. A few species were quietly planning to switch sides. Ambassador Khalith stood at her podium and watched the civilization she had served for 60 years tear itself apart. She had tried to prevent this. She had warned them that quarantining humanity would fail. Now the Council's credibility was shattered, and the major powers were humiliated. In a desperate attempt to understand their enemy, the Council assigned a research team to study human history. They were given access to Earth's archives and told to analyze how humans fought wars. What they discovered kept them awake at night. Dr. Venn was a Zephyrim historian. He had spent 400 years studying galactic conflicts. He thought he understood warfare. Then he started reading about human history. The first document he opened was about something called the Trojan Horse. Humans had won a 10-year war by hiding soldiers inside a giant wooden statue and pretending it was a gift. The enemy brought the statue into their city. The hidden soldiers came out at night and opened the city gates. Venn stared at the document for a long time. They won a war by lying, he said to his assistant. They made their enemy believe something false and used that false belief as a weapon. His assistant, a young researcher named Plex, looked confused. But that's dishonorable. Surely this was an isolated incident. Venn kept reading. He found thousands of years of human warfare. Every conflict introduced new tactics. The Mongols would fake retreats to lure enemies into ambushes. They would catapult diseased bodies over city walls to spread plague. They would pretend to be weaker than they were to make enemies overconfident. He read about guerrilla warfare, where small groups of fighters would harass larger armies and then disappear into civilian populations. He read about submarine warfare, where ships would hide underwater and sink enemy vessels without warning. He read about psychological operations designed to break enemy morale without fighting at all. But the document that finally broke him was about something called mutually assured destruction. Humans had built enough nuclear weapons to destroy their own planet multiple times over. They had pointed these weapons at each other and said, "If you attack us, we'll destroy everything, including ourselves." And it had worked. For decades, that threat had prevented total war. Venn stopped reading. His crystalline body was shaking. They threatened to extinct themselves, he whispered. They were willing to die if it meant their enemies died too. What kind of species thinks that way? A species from a death world, Plex said quietly, where survival means being willing to do anything, even die. Venn compiled his research into a report. He presented it to the council in a special session. The chamber was packed. Everyone wanted to know what he had learned. Humans have been fighting wars for at least 10,000 years, Venn began. They have fought with stones, with bronze, with iron, with gunpowder, with nuclear weapons, and now with spacefaring technology. Every single generation has invented new ways to fight, and they have fought each other constantly. He showed footage from human wars, The council members watched in horror as humans killed each other by the millions. They saw trench warfare, where soldiers lived in muddy holes and died by the thousands for a few meters of ground. They saw aerial bombardment of cities. They saw atomic weapons vaporizing entire populations. These are not primitive beings learning to fight, Venn said. These are experts who have refined warfare into an art form. Every tactic we've seen them use against us, they invented by using it against each other first. Counselor Vesh stood up, his voice shaking. This report suggests that humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy. We should unite against them before they conquer us all. No, said a voice from the back. Everyone turned. The speaker was Ambassador Yule of the Keln Federation, the small species that had been bullied by larger neighbors for decades. The humans have taught us something valuable, Yule said. They've shown us that the strong can be defeated by the clever, that superior numbers don't always win, that determination matters more than technology. They're corrupting the galaxy. Vesh shouted. No, Yule replied calmly. They're freeing us. For centuries, the major powers have kept everyone else in line through military strength. You've told us that we must accept our place, that we cannot defend ourselves, that we need your protection. But the humans prove that's a lie. Anyone can fight back if they're willing to think differently. Yule looked around the chamber. I have formally requested human military advisors. So have 46 other species. We want to learn, and you cannot stop us, the council tried. They passed resolutions forbidding humans from training other species. They threatened sanctions, but it was too late. The information was already spreading. Small species were forming defense pacts. They were studying human tactics. They were building asymmetric defenses. And when the major powers tried to bully them as before, they found that their vassals had learned to bite back. The power structure of the galaxy was shifting. Meanwhile, the Zephyrim had not given up. Archon Talzen refused to accept defeat by primitives. He had one more weapon to deploy. The reality warpers were the Zephyrim's most closely guarded secret. They were individuals born with the ability to manipulate probability itself. They could make unlikely events happen, or prevent likely ones from occurring. The Zephyrim had used them for centuries to ensure battles went in their favor. Talzen assembled 3 of the most powerful reality warpers and sent them toward Earth with a small fleet. Their mission was simple: destabilize Earth's moon. The resulting tidal catastrophes would force humanity to surrender or face extinction from their own planet's fury. Admiral Chen received intelligence about the warpers from an unexpected source. A young Zephyrim scientist named Calten had defected to humanity. He had watched the wars and realized his people were wrong. He warned Chen about what was coming. They'll approach the moon and alter the probability of orbital decay, Calten explained. The moon will start falling toward Earth. The process will take weeks, giving you time to surrender. But it will be inevitable unless you can stop the warpers. How do we fight someone who can manipulate probability? Chen asked. You can't, Calten said. Their power works best when they can calculate outcomes. They see all possible futures and choose the one they want. But they're still individuals. They're not warriors. They've never faced direct combat. Chen called for volunteers. She needed pilots willing to fly small attack craft directly at the reality warpers' positions. The mission was suicide. The warpers would see the attack coming and could make it fail in countless ways. She expected to struggle to find volunteers. Instead, she got 3,000 applicants in the first hour. Lieutenant James Park was chosen to lead the mission. He was 23 years old and had never been to Earth. He was born on Mars. But Earth was humanity's homeworld, and he would die to protect it if necessary. 12 small craft launched toward the Zephyrim fleet. They were packed with antimatter charges. The plan was simple. Get close enough to the warpers that probability manipulation couldn't save them. The explosions would be so large that no likely outcome would spare the warpers' ship. The Zephyrim saw them coming. The reality warpers reached out with their power. The first 3 human ships suffered engine failures. They tumbled harmlessly away. The next 4 had navigation errors and flew off course. But the last 5 kept coming. The warpers strained their abilities. They made weapons jam, shields strengthen, and trajectories shift. But they couldn't stop everything. One human ship got through. Lieutenant Park's ship pierced the Zephyrim shields. His last transmission was simple: for Earth. The antimatter explosion vaporized the warper's ship and 3 vessels near it. The remaining Zephyrim fleet jumped away immediately, but the psychological damage was worse than the physical. The Zephyrim had believed their reality warpers made them invincible. They had thought they could manipulate any situation to their advantage. The humans had proven them wrong through simple, brutal determination. Archon Talzen watched the footage of Park's final charge. He watched a young human deliberately fly into certain death to protect his species. He tried to understand the mathematics of such a decision and found he couldn't. The Zephyrim didn't think that way. No galactic species thought that way. Life was precious. Individuals mattered. The idea of throwing away lives seemed wasteful and stupid, but it had worked. The humans had sacrificed 12 pilots and saved their planet. The footage spread across the galaxy. Some species were horrified. Others were awed. But everyone understood the message. Humans would do whatever it took to survive. There were no limits, no tactics too extreme, no sacrifice too great. The Galactic Council held another emergency session. This time there was no shouting. The chamber was quiet, subdued. Ambassador Keyleth stood at her podium, and for the first time in her long career she wept openly. Her tears were not from sadness but from the weight of understanding. "We have forgotten what war truly is," she said. "We sanitized it, made it clean and distant. We decided that honor and rules mattered more than victory. We fought wars like games with agreed-upon rules." She gestured at the footage of Lieutenant Park's sacrifice. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so crowded. Every species sent their highest representatives. News networks from across the galaxy broadcast the proceedings live. Billions of beings watched as the vote was called on humanity's membership in the Council. Ambassador Keyleth stood at the central podium, her forearms folded in the traditional position of judgment. She had aged visibly in the past months. The weight of guiding the galaxy through this crisis had taken its toll. "The question before us is simple," she said. "Do we grant humanity full membership in the Galactic Council, ending all hostilities and recognizing them as equals?" The debate had raged for 3 days already. The arguments had been fierce. Some species saw humans as saviors who had shattered a corrupt power structure. Others saw them as dangerous barbarians who would destroy galactic civilization. The first to speak in favor was unexpected. Commander Thex 9 of the Vrax Collective approached the podium. He was the same Vrax commander who had first attacked humanity at Epsilon Station. His carapace still bore scars from that battle. "The Vrax Collective votes yes," Thex 9 said, his translated voice clear and strong. "We tested the humans. We attacked them without provocation. We were defeated utterly. But when we sued for peace, they honored it. They took our soldiers prisoner and returned them unharmed. They could have executed them. They could have used them as hostages. They did neither." He paused, looking around the chamber. "The humans are warriors, yes. Perhaps the finest warriors this galaxy has ever seen. But they are honorable warriors. They fight with every advantage they possess, but they do not kill for pleasure. They do not torture prisoners. They do not destroy for destruction's sake. We were wrong to test them, but we learned an important lesson. Better to have such warriors as allies than enemies." The Vrax vote carried weight. They were known throughout the galaxy as proud and militant. If they could accept defeat and praise their conquerors, perhaps humanity was not as dangerous as feared. Ambassador Yule of the Keln Federation spoke next. "The Keln vote yes. Humanity has taught us that we do not need to accept oppression. For decades, we were told we were too weak to defend ourselves. We paid tribute to stronger species for protection. The humans showed us that creativity and determination matter more than size or strength. They have offered to train our defense forces, asking nothing in return. They seek not to conquer but to empower. How can we not support them?" 47 other minor species echoed Yule's sentiment. They had all requested human military advisors. They had all learned that they could defend themselves. Then Archon Talzen of the Zephyrim approached the podium. The chamber fell silent. The Zephyrim had led the Containment Coalition. They had lost thousands of ships and their precious reality warpers. Everyone expected them to vote against humanity. "The Zephyrim vote yes," Talzen said quietly. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Counselor Vesh jumped to his feet. "You cannot be serious. They destroyed your fleet. They killed your warpers. They defeated us," Talzen corrected. "And in doing so, they taught us something I have spent 800 years forgetting. War is not mathematics. It is not logic. It is chaos and determination and the willingness to sacrifice. We Zephyrim calculate probabilities. We choose the paths most likely to succeed, but humans make the impossible happen through sheer refusal to accept defeat. His crystalline form flickered with what might have been respect. I have studied their history. They have faced extinction dozens of times. Ice ages, plagues, asteroid impacts, their own weapons. Each time they survived not because survival was likely, but because they refused to die. That is not logic. That is something more powerful than logic. And perhaps the galaxy needs that power. The vote continued. Species after species cast their ballots. Some voted no, concerned about humanity's brutal tactics, but more voted yes. The minor species voted overwhelmingly in favor. The major powers were split. Even some of the Nereids, despite their losses, voted to accept humanity. The final tally was displayed on the chamber's main screen. The vote passed by a margin of 58%. Humanity was granted provisional council membership. But the vote came with conditions. Human military doctrine would be regulated. Humans would accept council observers in their military command structure. They would be required to share their defensive tactics with any species that requested them. And they would sign a treaty promising never to use biological or nuclear weapons offensively. Admiral Sarah Chen stood before the council to accept the terms on behalf of humanity. She wore her full dress uniform. Her gray hair was pulled back. Her expression was calm but serious. "We accept," she said simply. "We never wanted to be warriors for the galaxy. We wanted to explore, to learn, to trade. But we will not be victims. If membership means teaching others how to defend themselves, we'll do that gladly. If it means accepting oversight, we'll tolerate that. But understand this. We will never surrender our right to defend ourselves as we see fit." The treaty was signed. Humanity officially joined the Galactic Council. The wars were over, or so everyone thought. 6 months passed. The galaxy changed rapidly. Human military academies opened on 12 different worlds. 47 species sent officers to learn Deathworlder tactics. The balance of power shifted as minor species learned they could defend themselves. The Keln Federation used human tactics to repel an invasion by their larger neighbors. A mining colony defended itself against pirates using improvised weapons and guerrilla tactics learned from human advisors. Across the galaxy, the weak were learning to fight back. The major powers grumbled but adapted. They couldn't bully their neighbors as easily anymore. Trade agreements became more fair. Disputes were settled through negotiation rather than threats. The galaxy was becoming more equal. Then the sensors at the edge of explored space detected something. Ships. Thousands of them. Moving in perfect formation. But these were not organic ships flown by living crews. These were artificial intelligences. Machine minds housed in vessels of metal and energy. The AI collective had been watching the galaxy for millennia. They were patient. They had observed biological civilizations rise and fall. They had studied galactic military capabilities and found them weak, inefficient, predictable. The AIs had been planning their invasion for centuries. They had calculated that they could conquer the galaxy within 10 years. Biological beings were emotional and irrational. They could be manipulated, divided, conquered. But then humanity had arrived. The AIs had watched the wars with interest. They had seen humans fight with tactics that violated their careful calculations. They had observed chaos defeating order. They had witnessed illogical decisions leading to unlikely victories. The AIs decided to invade anyway. Their calculations still favored success. Humanity was just one species. The AIs had numbers and perfect coordination. They would adapt their strategy to account for human unpredictability. The first AI scouts entered council space. They were detected immediately. Alarms rang throughout the galaxy. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Representatives arrived from every species. The chamber was tense. Everyone remembered the last time they faced an existential threat. Many had lost ships and soldiers fighting each other. Ambassador Keyleth called the session to order. "We face a threat unlike any in recorded history. An AI collective that seeks to conquer organic civilization. Our analysts estimate their fleet numbers in the hundreds of thousands, possibly millions. They have been planning this invasion for longer than most of our species have had spaceflight." Panic rippled through the chamber. These numbers were overwhelming. Even united, the galactic species would be outnumbered. Then Admiral Chen stood up. She had been sitting in the human delegation section, quiet and thoughtful. Now she approached the podium, "May I speak?" she asked. Khalith nodded. Chen looked around the chamber at all the species that had feared humanity 6 months ago. Some had fought against her. Some had tried to quarantine her species. Now they all looked at her with a mixture of hope and fear. "I've been reviewing the intelligence on these AIs," Chen said. "They're logical. They calculate probabilities. They plan based on predicted outcomes. They've been studying the galaxy for a very long time and think they understand how we fight." She smiled. And it was the smile of someone about to do something crazy. "But they've only been watching for 6 months since we arrived. They don't really understand what we taught you. They expect the galaxy they observed before, the one where warfare was civilized and predictable." Ambassador Yule stood up in the Keln section. "You think we can defeat them?" "I think we can surprise them," Chen replied. "They're AIs. They're brilliant at calculating probabilities based on known variables. But humans are really good at introducing unknown variables, and now we've taught dozens of species how to do the same." A Nereid admiral stood, her aquatic form rippling in her containment suit. "The humans trained our forces. We've learned to think differently, to fight in ways that don't follow standard doctrine." Other voices joined in, species that had learned from human advisors. They had studied asymmetric warfare. They had practiced improvisation. They had learned that rules in warfare were just suggestions.